Hey guys, do you want to learn how to make 70% gross margin on backup and DR? I know for some of you that might seem impossible. Doug Lowenthal and I are teaming up to deliver how to price backup and make really good margins while de-risking your MSP. If you want to learn the secrets to unlocking the growth around backup and DR, don't miss our live Q&A October 30th. Register using the link below.
For a year and a half, 2 years, it was really flat, right? There was like no growth happening. So you're really talking about like a 4-year span that we pulled that off. If I think back, like 20 to 40% year over year was the running rate for 3 or 4 years. Over 20 this past year, 40 the year before, 30 the year before that. That was like pretty consistently the bar we set for ourselves.
Hey guys, Damien Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Servosity. Today I continue my mission to interview 100 of the fastest growing and most interesting MSPs on the planet. Today I am blessed to be joined by Jeff Gaines. Now, he took everything I knew about growing an MSP and threw it out the window. He shared how he grew from 2 million to 17 million in revenue in under 5 years. He also shattered almost every expectation I had around private equity and how he was able to partner with the right firm to enable his growth and do things that I would never have thought possible. Spoiler alert, virtually all the growth that he talked about came with organic growth. So if you think you're just listening to another episode about private equity, think again. So Jeff, you joined Interlaced, I think, in an interesting way. So tell me about the year you joined and in what capacity.
Yeah, so I joined Interlaced. I was rather new to the IT and tech world. I had been living in like the marketing world for a few years, trying my hand at some different endeavors there. Did a few odd jobs along the way, bartended on the side, things like that. I kind of fell into the like IT space. A couple years into that, I found myself running operations for an IT provider, an MSP in San Diego. Was learning a lot about the business like while doing. I had a conversation with the brother of one of the founders of Interlaced, learned more about what they were up to. It sounded like an interesting idea. This like, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, but this sort of like Mac-centric at the time. That was their bread and butter Mac-centric MSP. And it sounded like they could use some help. I could provide some value and plug in doing some of the things I was doing in the current role. And so we made a match and I joined up and we got to work.
So about what size were they then and how did it feel coming in, I don't know, for lack of a better way, with a marketing background to a still fairly new MSP in terms of not a huge MSP?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, small company, like maybe 10 people at the time. That included 3 original founders. And then I joined as a partner at that time. So really small business, doing regular kind of small business MSP stuff like consulting residentially and billing by the hour and that kind of thing. The adaptation from marketing world and like creative and digital to IT, I'd been on that journey for a little while already. So like I was kind of like, I was a chameleon in some ways. I knew enough to like talk the talk and like, you know, be helpful. What honestly attracted me to Interlaced a little bit was like they were so brand forward in a space that always felt very homogenized from like a branding and like aesthetic standpoint. And so like, I think that was intentional. Like the founders really had an eye for that, for making sure that the tone and the feel of what they were building matched what their consumers expected. Consumers largely being people that had just walked out of the Apple store with a brand new ergonomic Steve Jobs designed device. And so it felt like kind of like the perfect opportunity for me because it was, you know, the meshing of these two worlds that I was now kind of, you know, growing this young career in. So, you know, to put that shortly, like it felt like the perfect place for me to like put down roots.
That's really cool. So you joined 3 other founders, 2016, and then tell me about what you needed to do over the next 2 years to make a change, and how much of that was managed services when you walked in the door.
Yeah, they were doing a good amount of managed services. I think they had done a good job getting like high net worth residential customers to pay on a monthly retainer.
Oh, wow.
And they had started getting into some small businesses. It was really 18 months between the time that I joined and the time that we ended up partnering with private equity, which again, I know we'll talk about, but that was a lot of like building scalable service delivery, kind of putting systems thinking around that, making sure our account management function was producing sales results, that we were providing solutions for our customers. Once you sell the first time, you have to continue making impact with your customers for the rest of their life cycle with you. And so if you're not doing that, you're shrinking the value of the partnership. And so that was a big focus. And then, getting anyone that was like lingering onto, we say like kind of the current market paper, or whatever our current contract was, which was really popular, like an all you can eat sort of model, right? So it was a lot of that work, really just trying to like uncover, turn over stones and like uncover opportunities to make things better all around the business, HR, accounting, ops, service, sales, marketing for that matter. In a small business like that, that's growing and transforming, there's like nothing but opportunity. So like, it felt like every day there was like a new thing that we could work on that was going to make the business stronger and ultimately more valuable for a future investor.
Was there one of those areas that was really yours more than another, or what areas did you focus on the most?
Yeah, when I got started there, it was like I really started on service delivery, which was like their help desk, their field technicians, some project delivery, and just trying to find ways to like really systemize that and make it like so that we wanted to get to a place where we had a really repeatable result. And again, when you're that small, there's so much variability based on the person and the time of day and like the client. And so it was about taking all of those unique qualities and then building a system around them so you kind of like consistently got the output that you wanted. So really started there. And then like pretty quickly after that, like a couple months in, it was like, okay, like there's a lot more we can do here. And we started focusing on a lot of the other areas of the business.
So something pretty big happened about 18 months later. And it sounds like some of that was due to the growth and or conversion of more of the revenue to managed services. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I joined on this journey thinking I was joining a small business. We kind of had this skunkworks software development arm that was brewing inside the business that I was helping out with as well. And that really caught legs. And I think the founders, they decided it was the right time for them to go focus on that endeavor. And the best way to do that was to not be focused on Interlaced, the MSP endeavor. They had run their course with that. And so they took it to market and courted some potential buyers. And we found one that really seemed to resonate with our culture and what we were trying to do at Interlaced, and got a deal done, and they exited, and I stuck around, and here I am so many years later talking to you now about Interlaced, which is really interesting. But it seemed like we found the right opportunity for everybody, where they got where they wanted to be. We got a good buyer and a good partner for Interlaced, and someone that was going to support us for the next several years.
So what were you guys looking for in that buyer and in that relationship? Yeah,
there's always like the monetary aspect of any deal, obviously. I think all things being equal there, the thing that likely attracted them, and I think the thing that still is attractive to sellers today, this is buyer's evergreen services. The thing that's still attractive today is that we really have this hands-off, decentralized approach to our businesses that we partner with. And so they've done a great job staying true to the Berkshire Hathaway ethos of take really great businesses, make sure you have really great talent in there, and then really just kind of get out of the way. Like, there are enablement strategies that we can help with if the businesses want or need them. But generally speaking, as long as we're setting good targets and we have alignment, the businesses are best served by the people inside the business and not by, people behind an Excel spreadsheet. And that was true then. And I think that's why we got that deal done and made that match. And certainly true today as well.
So it's interesting, I hadn't thought of the analogy, right, to Berkshire Hathaway, and the way that they do that. And it's also pretty uncommon, I think, the normal MSP playbook, whether you're doing this out of your own capital with a small MSP or you're private equity backed, is to roll up and integrate. So why did this attract you guys? Let me start with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it typically is like legacy. It's like, you've worked so hard building something for however long, it could be 10 years, it could be 50 years or 40 years, I think more common in our industry. And so you want to keep that intact. You want to make sure people are taken care of. So like, you spend so much of your life at work, day in, day out. You're the fiduciary for all those years. You really develop a bond with your team and your people and your clients and partners as well. And so, finding somebody that's going to do the best possible job of like keeping all of that intact is important. So I would say like those are like the main qualities I think that make Evergreen, a good partner for someone like Interlaced. There are a million other things there, obviously, but legacy, taking care of people, like those are definitely core tenets.
So about what size were you guys when you were acquired?
About the same size. So I think we had maybe added a couple of heads. I think the business was doing probably about $2 million top line.
About so how many people would you say?
Yeah,
you recall?
Probably about a dozen people. Okay. So still rather small business. I think we'd grown just a little bit in that 18 months that I was there, but I think we put a good foundation in for future growth.
Well, I asked because I think a lot of people jump to the conclusion that private equity only buys massive, companies. And obviously at the time, 2 million and 12 employees is bigger than most, but not a massive company by any stretch of the imagination. So that's interesting. Tell me what happened in the next 18 months, because everybody just assumes, it's just up and to the right. Right?
Yeah, I wish that were the case. I think it's worth saying like we were early on in Evergreen's investment strategy, and so I think we were amongst the first cohort of MSPs they partnered with. So there's a lot of like figuring things out from all angles. I'm figuring out how to be a CEO. They're figuring out what a good investment looks like. We're all figuring out what it looks like to work together. So there's like, I think what I would define as like a stabilization period for a few months after the acquisition, where it was like, we kind of thought we had things together. We needed to batten down the hatches a little bit on operations, on, stabilizing our team, stabilizing our client accounts. And so that took some focus and effort for quite a bit of time. So there was no growth for months and months and months. Like, I think right up into really going into kind of COVID, we were in that process of like figuring out our identity and what it was like to be part of this bigger thing that is private equity. And, I'll say as an add-on to that, Evergreen gave us a lot of latitude during that time to go through that exercise. And it wasn't like, hey, you have to turn a quick buck or this is a bad investment. It was like I think that's where their ethos of like really having a long-term vision for their portfolio came to shine, where it was, we had the grace from them to be able to get things right before we turned our attention to growing the company.
Yeah, I think that's, for anybody who hasn't been through it, I think it's easy to think, oh, well, they're going to want the fastest return, quarter on quarter growth.
And some folks are like that, but it wasn't like that here.
That's huge. So tell me about the decision to niche. First of all, how did you even come to that? And what was that niche?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned earlier, like the founders had this original vision of being like a Mac centric or Apple centric IT company. And so we always kind of had that like in our DNA, for better or worse. Like we just always were like the Mac people, I guess, which is like in MSP terms, like, maybe not the best thing to say out loud, but
it's unusual.
I think, we started to differentiate, or I would say rather diversify the clients we were working with along that journey. After I started, it was like, okay, PCs aren't scary. We can do networks. Like we can do more than just fixing someone's iMac at home. However, we found that the businesses that resonated with our brand, with our expertise, had like a commonality. And so there are a few different sort of pillars that we worked with early on. It was a lot of like digital and creative, which again, my background helped with. I could kind of serve those customers and speak that language well. There was, we did a lot of education work because of like iPads and things like that. And then we started having this like emergent cohort of startup accounts. And part of that was like we were operating in San Francisco and San Diego at the time as core markets. And part of that was like, we were good with Google, we were good with Macs, like those are kind of preferred technologies in those environments. And then part of it, I think, was like just culturally, we started to like morph into that ourselves. Like we started to become a reflection of our client base in some ways, so that we could walk the walk and talk the talk with them. And we knew how to move quickly and we knew what value looked like for them. So it really happened organically. And it just sort of like, we started just sharpening that spear over time, where it was like, okay, like the rest of the clients coming in, the rest of the opportunities, we weren't going to turn them down if they were a good fit from all the other dimensions, but like we could recognize that they were maybe more noise than value. And then really over the last couple of years, we got super sharp on like speaking directly to startups. Like, hey, we are the company that can help you, and we're the best people to do this because this is all we do every day, all day and night, all across the country. Which is a really powerful message to like go to market with. Like, if you're speaking to a consumer that direct, it really, really resonates.
So did you go through a period where you struggled with the niche? And I just know that I've done that. It's like, well, I'm afraid I'm going to give up all this business when I say that I stand for this. Or did you pretty quickly come to, we're dipping our toe in education, we're dipping our toe here and there, but then boom, it's startups?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like a hesitation period. Your salespeople are incentivized to sell. And so they're immediately thinking, oh my gosh, like this is going to cut off my pipeline. Your marketing people are very excited about it. It like makes their job clearer, probably not easier, but definitely, better understood. And I think like, outside too, like trying to sell through that we wanted to do that was, it wasn't immediate. There was like a little bit of a journey there. It was like, hey, we want to really just double down, have hyper focus. But once we started getting like key stakeholders bought in on that, within the company, within the private equity world that we were in, then it like was just like crystal clear for everybody. This is a winning strategy. So like, let's just, once you lock arms, like it's okay to like have dissent in a conversation, but like once you lock arms, something like you just all go full speed ahead. And that's really how it's felt for the last couple of years on that.
And on the niche side, were there more than one layer to the niche? And what I mean is, was it startups in a geography and that's kind of your niche? Or is it startups that use Apple and Google, or startups that do that and start with the letter A? Or I'm curious, like, how did you refine that ultimately?
Yeah. So there's like a few different dimensions to it. And, I like to think about it as like, there's like the deep dark green dimensions where it's like a go no matter what. And then you get like a little murkier lime and yellow. And eventually you get to like this like red don't go there zone. Mm-hmm. And that's a spectrum. It's a gradient, right? And so it's like, there's some give and take here, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean, we serve nationally at Interlaced. We basically had startups in every major market that startups operated in. Something called the Global Startup Index that measures venture capital activity in every across the globe, but also in the U.S. every metro. And we were really saturated in all 10 of the top 10 metros in the U.S. So it wasn't so much geographic. It was more like, what's their head count and what does that tell us about their financial situation? There's a lot of volatility in the startup world.
Yeah.
Generally we'd say, especially if we were doing like list building, we were doing outreach, we could look at companies that had just acquired like a sizable Series A, Series B, C, like you're getting like growth equity. It was like, go ahead, like run through the wall to get that deal. That's a good deal. They're not going anywhere. Once we got to like A, and it was a sizable investment from like a reputable investor, gives us a lot of confidence. But we would break that rule. We had people like serial entrepreneurs that had done amazing things that were like, hey, I just brokered a deal with like the government of Germany to like build charging infrastructure across the US. I'm like one guy, and I got the backing of Daimler Benz. We're like, sure, okay, like we'll take you on because you're going to be 500 people in 3 years. But generally it was like, can they pay us, and do they get value from the things that we're doing? We know if they're startups, they get value from the things that we're doing. We know by their funding and their headcount, they can pay us, which are like the two most important.
Yeah. When you said startups, I was like, oh, that sounds like it's like when people say nonprofit, it's usually like, oh, that sounds like a tough market to serve.
It could be like anything that's like you're getting external price pressure, like nonprofits can be a race to the bottom on your pricing strategy and profitability. Mm-hmm. Startups have money to spend generally once they get to a place where they've got, kind of product market fit and they've got some funding, and they're awesome for years. And then, if the really good ones are growing really fast, they outgrow your services. That's a success story as well. Where you get burned, and it's part of the game of playing with startups, is like when they go out of business quickly. And we always try to humanize, like there's a lot of people that lost their jobs. So like our contract's a small piece of the story, but it's unavoidable.
What were, when you got all of the pieces aligned, what was it? Startups that had raised a Series A, or what were the things you were looking for as like the ideal fit?
Yeah. I don't remember the exact dimensions. I haven't looked at it in a while, a different gig now. But it was like Series A startups, and we actually drilled down on startups a little bit too. So it was like hardware, software. We had people that were manufacturing like solar cars, and then we had people that were building SaaS. And then we drilled down further to say like fintech, medtech, like those are like big wins for us. And then it was like the dimension around, I think the headcount we defined, it was like 25 people with like a Series A, again, on a spectrum of like a little bit of intuition in that decision-making process. But we would always say like, hey, we want to work with startups like when you're 20 people and we want to grow you to 200 people. That was like the line, was like, we have the scalable infrastructure, the security you need. We're part of your team. We could talk more about that will take you from 20 to 200. So like, as you need to like add more to your technology, we can help you do that in a scalable way. As you're adding headcount and human capital, which startups do really quickly. And then there's a lot of turnover. So there's like the offboard function of all that. We really sharpened up that value chain for them. That was a big part of our service offering. And then like meeting them where they're at. So like we would just be in their Slacks with them. Like that was where we did our consulting and help desk work, was like in Slack all day, all night with them. They don't call you, they don't email you. You're in Slack and everything's urgent because they have investors. So we got really good at like doing that with them. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And getting into their Slack channel, right. And being integrated with them is huge.
Yes.
So if I understand your story, right, there was approximately 18 months since you joined, and then Evergreen acquired Interlaced, and now you're the CEO. And then there was, let's call it 18 months of rebuilding, restructuring, preparing. And then, as far as I can tell, just incredible growth over the next several years. So what kind of year growth rates were you seeing, and at least during your tenure at Interlaced, like when you went from 2 to to where help set the tone, and then we can come talk about that part in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. I think I would start with like the end state. So like as I left Interlaced in December, we were at 17 million top line. So like that was the trajectory. And again, I think you just said it really well. It was like for a year and a half, 2 years, it was really flat, right? There was like no growth happening, and maybe even some contraction during early days of COVID, right? There's a little bit of that going on.
Sure.
So you're really talking about like a 4-year span that we pulled that off. If I think back, like 20 to 40% year over year was the running rate for 3 or 4 years. It was over 20 this past year, 40 the year before, 30 the year before that. I'm trying to remember back. So it's like, that was like pretty consistently the bar we set for ourselves.
Wow. That's above best in class, many, many years.
Yeah. A lot of hard work and like a lot of moving really quickly is what gets you that result. And I'll say like, we always were the biggest. That wasn't like a private equity driven thing. That wasn't like Evergreen's like you got to grow 40% year over year. They have much more reasonable expectations. And in fact, we would, my partner in the business and CFO, we would turn in our budget every year. It was like kind of expectation setting with our investors. And then we'd always have an internal budget that was like 10 points higher, 15 points higher. And we weren't satisfied unless we hit that internal target. Yeah. And that's really how we got there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That it wasn't that pressure. I want to come back to that, but I want to understand 2 to 17 million in 4 or 5 years. Like, what do you attribute to that growth?
Yeah. I mean, so many things. So one was like just taking sort of a systems thinking approach to our growth organization within the company. Really thinking about all of the things that go into generating revenue, not just acquiring new customers and new logos, not just doing upsells and right sizing on pricing and things like that, but like really kind of putting the whole system together. And you mentioned kind of process mapping, but like sort of process mapping that out. Like, who is an ideal customer? We talked about that a little bit. Once they get signed up with Interlaced, how do we make them a long-term customer? How do we continue to expand the value that we're giving them over time, generating more and more impact as their business evolves and grows? So I think kind of first step was like putting a lens to that and figuring out what does that system look like that produces that. Obviously, having the right talent in the right seats is a big part of that. And so we identified like really great people to head up marketing and sales for us. We had really great account managers. We call them customer success at Interlaced. It's like a term more familiar for startup buyers. And I think then just like, the underlying fabric to that, I would say, is like, developing and cultivating a culture of growth, like a growth mindset, which is tough. Like, you're trying to hire really good technical talent. They are not always the people thinking, I'm so excited to grow this company. So you have to like turn down technical talent sometime to get like, serviceable technical talent that you can grow into the person you want them to be around the technology, but have all of the other like God-given attributes that you want to be in that seat, as far as like their attitude, their grit, their commitment. Some people freak out and panic when things are going really fast and things are growing incredibly rapidly and systems are breaking around you and there's always a new challenge. And you don't want people that are going to like panic in that situation. That's not the person you want in any seat in your company in that situation. You want someone that's like, cool, let's go get it. Let's get after it. And like, let's make the most of it. And I would say we had 100% adoption of that mindset across the board. Obviously it's like impossible to get to, but we made it a very intentional goal to get people that were aligned with that mentality in the business. And that goes so far in like the business carrying itself forward. So like you as, the figurehead and CEO or any executive leader for that matter isn't pulling the whole business along. The business is kind of pushing itself down the tracks at that point.
Yeah. Tell me about turning down the technical talent, because it can be hard to find the right talent, period.
Yeah.
And then you add faster growth. And that is it doesn't give you any extra time. So tell me about that, turning it down, and how'd you even know if they were the wrong fit?
Yeah, I would say, we had a scorecard process, which is like qualitative, obviously, but like a little more scientific than just like finger to the wind. There's always still finger to the wind. If they're a very impactful hire, even at the end, I would sit in those interviews and give a thumbs up or thumbs down, like gladiator style. Like, is this person going to be the right, is this person the interlacer? Are they the right cultural fit? So we would do that. We had questions that like lined up to, our core values that were like, we were looking for keywords and answers and behaviors during the interview process. And that helped us weed out. I mean, you still never know. I had a business mentor that said like hiring someone's like getting married after the first date. Like you never really know until you hire them. So you still have some swings and misses, obviously, in that process.
Sure.
But you're hedging your bets there. You're making it better odds for yourself by following a process. As far as turning technical talent down goes, we were really lucky. I think we were operating in like some big markets. We were picking up talent like all over the country. We had a pretty good bench of candidates that were like in our applicant system. I talked about getting like the right people in the right seats. We had like great people heading up our people operations team. They still have those great people there. I remember like Q4 of last year, asking them to do like a special project. And they're like, we're doing like 20 screenings a day or something like bananas, And so like, having people that can identify that talent and can weather the repetitions it takes to get the right people helps. So it was never really a challenge of like where we were in a position where we were like on our back foot, where company was growing too fast and we didn't have the right people or enough people, to take it on.
Were you guys always remote, or was that a big change?
Yeah, it was a big change. We had, I think I mentioned earlier, we had like a satellite office in San Francisco, really from the beginning. So we were kind of always operating was like these two different markets with like two different teams. We started kind of picking people up one off here or there as like our client base started expanding geographically. During COVID, it was like, hey, we can make this a strength of ours and we can really lean into this work from home, remote hiring strategy. I'll say like over the last year, we've pulled back on that a little bit. And I think are recognizing like with any experiment, you have to like evaluate the results. And one of the results was, hey, we were able to hire really good talent like anywhere we wanted or needed them. Another result was, hey, we feel like we're maybe getting a little more disjointed culturally than we want to be. Takes longer to get people trained and stood up, no matter how good your systems are, your plans for doing things remotely. Yeah. So I think they are continuing down this path, but really over the last year, we're like, hey, is there a way we can get a better concentration of people locally and bring some of that magic back?
So you do attribute some of the ability to get talent to your national reach for talent. Yeah,
absolutely. And, it's like you're broadening your candidate pool, right? And so just by the pure, it's like a sales, it's like a sales funnel. Just by pure numbers, you're going to have a better success rate by having a wider funnel. There's trade-offs, like I just mentioned in that, but it definitely helped us over the last few years.
Interesting. So I want to go back to that, 2 million to 17 million. How much of that was organic versus acquisition?
Yeah. I couldn't tell you hard numbers by the math. I'll tell you, we picked up a couple other MSPs along the way, very small operations. So in 2021, we acquired a company in Los Angeles. It's about 10 people. The founder exited at that time. And so it was like a little bit headless, right? Like it needed a place to live long term. And so we made the decision shortly after that to roll it into the Interlaced brand. We had great cultural alignment. We had great client alignment. So it worked out fairly well. There's obviously like challenges and disruption that comes with like integration like that. But all things considered, I think that was probably the best fit we could find to do it with. And then in 2022, we picked up a company in DC, and that was more of like a vertical integration. They were doing cybersecurity consulting work, early like CMMC type of work, before it got really hot over the last year or two. And so instead of having to go through contractors to deliver that work, the hypothesis was, hey, we can fold in this like awesome team of like 5 people, and there are 20 or however many accounts, and then we also get this new skill that we can unlock and we can cross sell. Similar, it was like small enough that it didn't make sense to kind of keep it as its own running org at that point. But it did open up a lot of opportunities and a lot of learnings around the cybersecurity space, which was, as mentioned, we weren't trading up for the most technical talent. And so that was something I think we left on the table for quite a while. This was a shortcut to getting there.
So just inferring what you said, it sounds like a lot of the growth was organic.
I'd say like, I told you I got a B in accounting. I'm trying to do really quick percentage math here.
Sure.
By far, the lion's share was organic growth.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing that everybody wants to know. I want to know, like, how'd you get from 2 to 17 million in less than 5 years?
Yeah. It's like, being fanatical about acquiring revenue. And so,
but let's start there, because most of us struggle with sales or marketing. So was it the marketing that drove it, the sales? I'm kind of curious what was working so well.
So demand. So like demand generation. So marketing's a part of that. I think we were in a unique place in the marketplace where our buyers bought through inbound. We had a lot of success with inbound, which I know a lot of MSPs do not. I also think that like a lot of MSPs just don't do it well. Like candidly, I've gotten a look at the best amongst the evergreen portfolio, and there's a lot to be desired in the way that they approach marketing. But we did have the advantage and the tailwind of, startup buyers buy a little more anonymously. So they'll buy through inbound activity. So we did that really well. I think spheres of influence, circles of influence-based selling is still really valuable, important. And we just had a lot of people doing that, like not just people in the sales organization. Like we got a lot of other folks involved in outreach and second order connections and things like that. We built an outbound program. We didn't use a service to do it. We built it ourselves. We hired a couple people. Wow. We got credit to our VP of growth, Jack, like really spent a lot of time in the trenches making sure we got our sequencing right, and that we were not just spray and pray, they call it, right, with an email blast. It was like, let's send a very targeted personal email. Let's follow up on LinkedIn. Let's do a phone call. Let's try to go to an event they're going to be at. And so like we were always kind of nurturing a hot list of accounts that way. We got our customers and our clients involved. So like, it starts with like delivering value to your customers and clients. And so, our startups knew that we served startups and they could see what we were doing for them. We had a referral program that we were not shy about talking about with them. And so they would go out and make connections. Another big part of it was like from my seat, actually getting involved in the communities we served and brokering partnerships in like the innovation economies in each of those communities. And so, getting out and like mingling and rubbing shoulders with the folks that are in the startup space in San Diego and LA and San Francisco. And towards the end there, we actually started up in Nashville as well. And so it's like all those little things. When I talked about earlier about systems thinking, a lot of people I think about sales as like, I have to get a really good sales guy. Mm-hmm. And that's like step one, which is a great first step, because you need to have someone waking up every day thinking about going out and getting new customers. Yep. And it can't be the CEO. It can't be the founder. Like just at some point that is unpractical, probably from the beginning, because there are, oftentimes in small businesses running every other function of the business as well. Yeah. So just by having a dedicated person there, I think is a good jump on hitting your goals. But it's really about systemizing all of the activities and building the infrastructure that activities work within to produce that result. And it's the same thing as like, I'm not technical enough. I'm going to screw this up, but like, there's a technical analogy here, obviously somewhere where it's like you're approaching all of the infrastructure, your client environment as one system put together, right? It's all got to work together in concert. And I think growth is the exact same thing. And it's not as simple as sales and marketing have to be orchestrated together. It's all of these little sub activities and subdomains that you really have to have focus on. And the least of, not the least of which is the cultural element, which I mentioned, like really getting the whole organization rowing in that same direction, having that growth mindset. Then it's like you start creating these flywheels, this flywheel effect, right? Okay, we know that our referral engine is going to work from our customers because we've got that spinning. We know that our expansion revenue engine is going to work, flywheel is going to work because our account managers, they know they have to deliver value and impact, and they have to get new solutions in the customers' environments. They need those, they want those. We know our new logo engine is going to work, and it's just on and on and on, right? And so I wish there were a simpler answer. If there were, I'd probably be making a lot more money. But there is value in the viewing the system as a whole.
So this may be a challenging answer, but I'm curious how much of an impact you think that tight focus and clear focus on your niche played, because you have so many things to make work in a unified manner, right? I think you mentioned the typical MSP is not great at inbound. Frankly, I don't think outbound either, but I think it can be much harder when you're less clear. Every business that's 5 to 250 employees in a certain geo area, which is the normal. How much do you think that mattered in your story?
Yeah, I think it was massive. And my understanding of the MSP space, and you probably know better than I would, is that most MSPs, they consider their backyard, that's their ICP, their ideal client profile. I'm in Pittsburgh. Every small business in Pittsburgh is my potential customer, which is fine because now you've cast a wide net over Pittsburgh. But I think the challenge there is like every other MSP in Pittsburgh considers that to be the same thing. They have that same view of the marketplace. And so you're all saying the same things. If you're talking to everyone, you're not resonating with anyone, right? So everyone's got the same sort of ubiquitous message. Hey, we're going to take care of your cybersecurity. Hey, we're going to world-class help desk. You can reach us anytime. never have a minute of downtime. I don't know what the positioning is, but I'm guessing those are a couple of them. Mm-hmm. Where I think there's value, even if you are in Pittsburgh, is saying, hey, we're in Pittsburgh and we're going to serve every manufacturing customer in Pittsburgh, because then we can speak manufacturing. Yeah. We know exactly the technology they use. We know exactly how they want to interact with us. We know the language they speak. We're speaking from a common vernacular. I think that's really powerful. And then all of your activities, whether they're digital or out of home or whatever you're doing, they can all sort of use that as collateral, that same tone of voice to resonate. And I think a lot of MSPs actually find that organically anyways, like, just kind of find that niche just through like word of mouth growth. But I think there's probably opportunity to sharpen up on it. It was immensely helpful for us.
Was this natural? Like I just don't run into MSPs that talk about inbound versus outbound and, an SDR team and those sort of things, like they, until they're really sizable. So it seems like you guys were and to a large degree still are ahead of that curve.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how far ahead we are than others. I can't speak to that, but I will say like it was a focus. Like, as soon as we got the ship sort of above water, it was the next thing was like, how do we grow this company? How do we like get out and get that done? And it wasn't just for me. Like I said, it was all across the organization. We had support there. I was really fortunate that the first and second people I hired in the company as like help desk technicians way back when, they were just awesome people. And so they grew sort of with me. So we were always sort of aligned on like vision and where we wanted to focus on the business. And they were eventually doing customer success and then sales. And so, yeah, it was intentional for sure. It was like, we want to grow this business. And I like being challenged, and I like, kind of operating within chaos. Like, I'm most comfortable there. And the best way to create chaos for yourself is like we said a little bit ago, like every day you wake up and you're now leading the biggest company you've ever led. And it was like that every single day for years and years and years. So, very much by design.
Yeah. And 40% growth means everything's going to break. Yeah. Something might survive a year at a 20% or 15%, but at a certain growth rate, you're going to break almost every system.
There's a lot of like breaking and retooling and tinkering, which, it's not for everybody. I'll say that. Like a lot of people have come through the Interlaced doors, and good people, and that was a stepping stone for them when they realized, this stuff's crazy. Like, I want to just go turn in my 8 hours and play with computers, and that's it. And that was not our job at all at Interlaced. It was very much like, even if it's not broken, we've got to find a way to make it better. Like we're constantly tinkering and trying to fix things. Yeah.
I want to talk about another angle here. I think there's sometimes this misperception that private equity has got this gun to your head for growth.
Yeah.
And you talked about that, they left you alone while you were kind of figuring things out and getting the structure. I think there's also sometimes this perception that there's just, because they are a financial institution, that there's unlimited capital available, blank checkbook. So you can do things that no other MSP could do in terms of just spend money like you're drunk or something, right? So maybe, but anyway, I think sometimes perceptions lean that way. How much or how little did being private equity backed really shape your ability to grow?
Yeah, it definitely influenced, I think, our desire to grow. Like that was even something that was on the table. I kind of mentioned we were in a comfort zone for a little while, and I'll say Evergreen in particular, I think, sits in a very unique place in that regard. So no one's throwing capital at you. It's not venture capital, right? And so we're not just trying to get a bunch of front-loaded capital to grow customer acquisition. It doesn't work that way. And it's also not like a turn and burn private equity shop where it's, hey, we're trying to maximize margin and profit for a 3 to 5 year life cycle so that we can remarket the asset and get this huge return. They really have this long-term, vision. At Lyra, we say we're building a 100-year business, which think about how many 100-year businesses you could probably count on two hands from memory. There's really not that many institutions that are top of mind. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I think we get a lot of benefit that, yes, we have to grow the companies because we're borrowing capital. We have investors. We need to pay them back on a yield. But we don't have to do it in this reckless, super fast way. Interlaced, we did it really fast. No one else is doing it that fast, obviously. And that was, as I mentioned, that was our internal intrinsic motivation. But their expectation is much lower. It's reasonable, sustained, healthy growth year over year over year. And they'd be completely stoked with that result. And they are completely stoked with that result. But yeah, they definitely lit the light bulb in my head to say, okay, it would be really cool to grow this thing. And then once you do it, it's very addicting and you want to keep doing it over and over and over again.
So that seems counterintuitive, right? I totally get that you're not, and I think for some folks, venture capital is probably a lot of folks you were serving, and venture capital Series A, that's usually code word for here's $5 or $10 million. Let's see if you implode or become a unicorn. And so it is very much like that bet. And then on the other end of the spectrum, like you said, you might have PE where there's a particular 3 to 5 year hold. And so there's a particular playbook for some PE. So you had this far more patient, this 100-year view, which is hard to imagine.
Right.
Even harder for me to imagine is why, once you sold the company, did you become more motivated? Because I think most of us would go, well, I've sold and maybe I have some kind of earnout or some, I have some upside, but I've gotten a decent amount of the cash off the table. I just, I'm not giving up, but I've seen most people, they went from 100% to 90 or 95, so
sure.
Why did you decide to say, no, I'm going harder now?
Yeah, I think worth saying, like, no, I didn't get rich from selling my part of Interlaced. I had a very small part in it, and definitely had upside on the back end of that deal, and worked through that. So working through some of that, honestly, it's just like, I think just like how I wake up in the morning is like, I'm really motivated to go like do awesome, great things. And for me, that means, and when I was serving Interlaced, that meant growing that business, like, to the maximum ability, like to what it could withstand. And I think like I'll go back to that wasn't all just me. Like I had a lot of partnership in that, with the folks there. But yeah, and it's still like, and honestly, like now I'm like trying to figure out what my purpose is in this new role. I'm like, how do I like now take all of that and apply it here, and, starting to get some traction there. But, yeah, a little bit of that is like, how do I apply that same mindset to a bunch of other MSPs that, aren't this crazy thing that Interlaced was, which was like totally bizarre and unique, which I understand.
Super rare.
Yeah. So I'm figuring it out on the fly.
So help me understand. You mentioned Evergreen, you mentioned Lyra. Interlaced was your MSP, or that you and your partners that you sold. And then tell me how the relationship between Evergreen and Lyra works. What that is.
Yeah. So I guess I could start with like, so I'm a Lyra employee now. I don't know if we said that yet. Lyra is the operating arm of Evergreen Services. So Evergreen Services is the financial vehicle. Early on, it was the financial vehicle and the operating arm. So it was all of the above in one. And then with success and growth, they found a need to break that out. And so the way they did that is Lyra became sort of the stewards of the operational elements of all of our MSPs. And that's all the things that you could think of managing, 80 plus MSPs, making sure, we've got all the resources and playbooks, and all of expectations are set very well for everybody. That's what Lyra is accountable for.
So during that time period and over that time period, does that mean you were the fastest growing of the 80?
Yeah. I don't know. So there's a little bit of like, it's easier to grow on a smaller base. Sure. So there's some of that going on. Like I'll see reports, and there's businesses that will have like a negative EBITDA year, and then they're like a 500% growth. So like, it's a little bit murky how to do that. I'll say that in 2024, out of all like the pure MSPs that were operating, we had the number one MRR acquisition engine. So we acquired, I think by a large margin, the most there. And I got to imagine for many of those years, we were amongst the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing. I think what I'm most proud of is like the sustainability. Like we just continue to do it year in and year out. And, you can have one good year, or you can turn around a reclamation project, but like to continually grow on this like linear up into the right clip is a pretty cool story to tell.
If you had to boil it down into what are the core things that allowed you to build something that's sustainable? Because it's rare, like that growth engine that continues to grow.
I mean, it's all the things that we talked about. It's like, I guess like the sustainability element, systems and activities and all this stuff aside, it's really the culture and the expectation that when you come to work for Interlaced, whether it's your first day or your last day, it's like you're coming to work at a place where we expect everyone to put in a effort that gets that result, that gets us to that, that moonshot target, our North Star, so to speak. And so I think the one thing that's been consistent in that regard all along the way is like that culture, that focus on excellence and that growth mindset. And people have come, people have gone, and the company's changed and evolved. That's like our DNA. That's like always been there.
Tell me about your new role and how long has it been? And there's not many roles like this. So tell me what that new role entails.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so at the time that we're filming this, like a few months. So like still getting into the swing of things. New role, my title is regional CEO. And so the way that Lyra operates is we have 80 plus MSPs all across the country and overseas. We have some in the UK and Australia and New Zealand. And so that's broken into smaller regions. I think there's 7 of us now. And so I have 6 peers. My role today basically is like making sure that I'm supporting a group of CEOs, making sure that they have what they need from Lyra or Evergreen for that matter. That when they need support and help, that we're there to provide it for them. When they come and ask for something, that I can deliver it. And then similarly, like that on advocating for Lyra and Evergreen, that like when we need something and there's a deliverable or something that we're looking for, that I'm the conduit back to those businesses and those leaders, and translating that in a way that resonates with them. So I'm kind of like this like glue piece, I guess. I'm just kind of like gluing all these different stakeholders together. I'm not sure the best way I can describe it. That interpretation of the role might change in a few months, but as of now, that's what I think I'm doing.
Yeah, fair enough. So the CEO often stays on in one of the acquired companies, and then if they're in your region, they may be working with you to support them. If I got that right, give me an example. Like, what do people reach out for in terms of support? Yeah.
I mean, it depends. So I think I have a unique setup even within the Lyra world. So like, I've got some of our largest businesses. They have original founders in place still years later. And so like, we always say like the best person to run the business is the founder, obviously, and the next best person is to be determined. But these, that's totally true. Like these guys are professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. So far, very little that they need from me, which is a good thing. Like, like if they're doing well and they feel like they're in control of the situation, that's awesome. I think one thing I'm focused on, like I mentioned, was how do I take all my strengths and passions and experience and make that valuable for these businesses or for Lyra as a whole, and kind of working on that now in the form of, can we do some sales and growth acceleration for some of these businesses? So that's active as a project in my mind and slowly coming on paper. But I mean, not much, honestly. Like there's not really like a lot that these businesses need. Sometimes they'll reach out and say like, hey, we're thinking about this tool. Has anyone used this tool before? Or do we have a relationship with the vendor? Or, how are other people pricing this service or this product? Or, hey, we're trying to acquire this big customer and they have locations all over. Are there any other MSPs at Lyra that we can co-sell this with? There's like just anything you can think of, really. Like think about having like the best set of MSPs in a peer group that's 80 strong. Anything that you think that you would tap into that for is what is being tapped into for. And it's usually stuff like that. It's like, hey, I need some support or enablement. Usually not from Lyra or from Evergreen, but from some other MSP that has a certain expertise or has done something in the past and found success with it. That's like a cheat code. We can just totally accelerate the whole experimentation phase for our businesses by doing that, by partnering up, 2 different individuals, one that's done it and one that's trying to do it. Like think about, it's like a wormhole you opened up, right? Like think about how fast you can accelerate that strategy. So it's been a lot of that.
So I want to switch gears. What's the biggest lesson you've learned over all your years as running in it, when you're running in your MSP?
Yeah. Probably no surprise in this answer, but like the value of velocity in your business, velocity in decision-making. I think anytime I think about, I have regret about something, it's because I didn't act fast enough. Or I didn't, take the chance and experiment and try something. Bezos has this, like, you've probably heard this, like the one-way door, two-way door thing, where it's like, if it's a two-way door, you can go back out. Like, you might as well like burst through the door and try and experiment with it. And you can always go back. This one-way door, be more methodical and more careful with your decision-making. But as long as they're two-way doors, which like most things in our businesses are, there's really no need to like slow down and have this, extremely weighty risk profile. You're better off just trying to make the decision and move fast.
If there's one thing you could do over or differently, what would that be?
Yeah. I mean, probably, that's a good question. Probably trying to get to that mindset sooner. It didn't happen overnight, and it's like it's like heuristics. You have to like do something and like get feedback from it and realize you're going to be okay. I see like a lot of new CEOs entering these businesses and like walking on eggshells, right? And you're like learning the industry, and you don't want to break anything. And it's like, dude, we have done the craziest things you can imagine, and the business has been fine from it, if not better, right? And so I think just getting conviction around that sooner, think about where Interlaced would be now had I done that. And then, I guess like if I were to like impart that on others, like the thing to take away from there is just try it. Like, if it's not going to be catastrophic, which most things aren't, then it's worth trying, in my opinion.
Given what's going on in the industry, all the things that you're doing now that are very different and interesting, what is something that you're looking forward to?
Yeah. I mean, the obvious answer is AI. It's on everyone's mind. Lyra's got a huge focus on it right now. If you're not doing it yet, you should be soon, or you're going to get left behind. I think it's nascent, but it's already forcing a lot of adaptations. So like a real example of that is we saw Google has had a few iterations now of optimizing their algorithm for like SEO and even paid search, and like prioritizing content that is like more valuable to the users. And that, I think, is a direct outcome of people now they can sort of cheat the system with AI and generate really great SEO. And so that's one. It's like a cat and mouse game, right? So that's like one example. I think the one that is probably coming down the pike pretty quick is help desk. Depending on your business and your customers, might already be highly commoditized, but like as AI starts becoming more of a powerful utility and help desk transactions, that's going to be totally commoditized. And so then where are you actually delivering value? It's going to probably be morphing and permutating here in the near future. But we're all trying to figure that out. Everybody, I think the whole industry right now is trying to figure that out and get the answer to those questions.
Yeah. That could be a whole nother episode, I think.
Yeah.
What's your biggest challenge right now, Jeff? What's something you would share that you'd say, hey, this is one thing that I'm really trying to unlock or figure out?
Yeah. I mean, it's been sort of the theme of this conversation, but it's like proving that I'm not a one-trick pony is like a big part of it, right? So like I had a huge hand in the success of Interlaced and that growth story, and like now I'm trying to figure out how do I take those learnings and adapt them to the rest of our businesses and help them achieve their growth goals. So it's a good challenge to have. Like I'm facing it. I'm like right at the wall on it right now. And so, hopefully by the next time we talk, I'll have made some progress on that. But the hypothesis is that there's a pathway to like really help these businesses, juice their growth engines with some, I don't want to say easy, but like simple, just practices and playbooks that we've developed at Interlaced.
Yeah, it's a good choice of wording. I've learned to differentiate between simple and straightforward, because if I'm now excited, the worse we are at something when we go to get help, because the change is going to be that much bigger.
Totally.
Even if it's not simple, it's more straightforward than when you're like highly optimized.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a top book you would recommend? What's the one book or two you would recommend others read?
Two, I'm reading The First 90 Days again. So that's helping me kind of manage my transition here. It'd probably take me 90 days to read it at the current clip. A really popular one with me and amongst my peers is Built to Last, so Jim Collins, staple book, like definitely recommend for any business leader or someone that's even thinking about being a leader. Like having like BHAG, big goals, like, having this like kind of fanatical culture. Those are just like invaluable things to implant in yourself. And I think Jim does a great job doing that. I'd say probably those two right now are top of mind. Got a few other good ones back there. Stoicism, if you're into Stoicism, Daily Stoic's a good one. I had a old interlacer got me that book. But yeah, anything that helps you like kind of find peace after the workday, I think is a good book.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Stoicism.
Yeah.
How could folks find you online if they'd love to reach out or connect or say hello?
Yeah, that's a great question. LinkedIn, so I'm on LinkedIn. I do not know what my LinkedIn link is. So.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, right on. For all my strengths, like social is not one of my strengths. But yeah, I encourage you to reach out on LinkedIn, or I guess you can get me on email through LinkedIn too, InMail. Happy to talk to anybody, obviously, about my journey or any challenges or ideas they have. Love doing that kind of stuff. We didn't talk about it today, but a big part of my journey has been consulting with other businesses, startups, other MSPs all along the way, and learn as much talking to others as I do doing myself. And so definitely welcome those conversations.
Make sure not to miss out on the opportunity to reach out to Jeff, take advantage of his offer. Jeff, this has been just amazing and such a gift and a blessing. Thank you for being on MSP Mindset today.
All right. Hey, pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Damien. Appreciate it.